All right, a really interesting political pitch from the president over the weekend. Not tax cuts,
could say that.
not drain the swamp. No, we need Republicans in office so I don't get impeached.
Protect me, the message from the president. Listen to what he told supporters at this rally in Michigan.
We have to keep the House, because if you listen to Maxine Waters, she goes around saying, we will impeach him. We will impeach him. Then people said, but he hasn't done anything wrong. Oh, that doesn't matter. We will impeach the president. We got to win the House. And you know what? We're going to win anyway.
Let's talk about this with our political director, David Talion. So, David, what's the risk reward here? We were sort of stunned hearing this Saturday night that is the tactic that he's using.
The moment Jack Smith said those words, the room understood what we're actually watching. But this time, the confession didn't come from a prosecutor. It came from the man himself. We are witnessing a psychological and political unraveling that is no longer happening behind closed doors. It is happening in public, under the glare of television lights, in a way that suggests the President of the United States knows something that the rest of the country is only just beginning to piece together. Donald Trump is terrified. And I don't use that word lightly. I don't use it to sensationalize. I use it because it is the only forensic conclusion available when you analyze the transcript of what happened at the GOP retreat just days ago. In a room full of House Republicans, his firewall, his protectors, his jury, Donald Trump didn't talk about the economy. He didn't talk about the border. He didn't talk about making America great again. He talked about his own survival. He told them with a clarity that borders on a plea deal that if they lose the majority in the 2026 midterms, he will be impeached. Not they might try, not it's a witch hunt. He said, I will be impeached. This is an admission of liability. In legal terms, this is what we call consciousness of guilt. You do not predict your own inevitable indictment unless you know exactly what evidence is sitting in the safe. You do not warn your bodyguards that the wolves are coming unless you know you have left the gate open. Trump looked his party in the eye and essentially said, my presidency is now a hostage situation and you are the only ones holding the gun. But why now? Why is the panic setting in at this specific frequency? Because the noise you hear from Capitol Hill isn't just the usual partisan bickering. It is the sound of the constitutional machinery grinding into gear. We are seeing a convergence of three distinct existential threats to this administration that are hitting all at once. A renewed, formalized impeachment movement, a serious legislative attempt to strip the commander-in-chief of his war powers, and perhaps most disturbingly, an open discussion about the 25th Amendment triggered by behavior that has moved from unorthodox to clinically concerning. Let's start with the catalyst. The incident that has suddenly accelerated this timeline from eventually to immediately. Greenland. It sounds absurd when you say it out loud, doesn't it? It sounds like a punchline from a bad late-night monologue, but we need to stop laughing because the people inside the Pentagon and the State Department are not laughing. They are sweating. When the President of the United States actively justifies a military or coercive acquisition of a sovereign territory, a territory belonging to a NATO ally, after already rattling the global order with strikes in Venezuela, we have left the realm of negotiation tactics. We have entered the realm of cognitive detachment from geopolitical reality. This isn't about real estate. This is about a fundamental inability to distinguish between the presidency and a private equity firm. The reports coming out of Denmark, the panic in Copenhagen, the emergency cables flying between embassies. This is the reaction of the world realizing that the person in charge of the American nuclear arsenal may no longer be operating within the agreed-upon parameters of reality. And Congress sees it. This is why Representative Yasamin Ansari didn't just issue a press release disagreeing with the policy. She posted the number 25, the 25th Amendment. Let's be precise about what that means. Section 4 of the 25th Amendment is the break glass in case of emergency clause of the Constitution. It was written for a moment when a president is physically or mentally unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. For decades, this was a theoretical discussion in law school classrooms. Today, it is a hashtag being used by sitting members of the United States Congress to describe the current occupant of the Oval Office. Ansari isn't alone. She is giving voice to a terrifying consensus forming in the cloakrooms and the quiet corners of the Capitol, that the president is extremely mentally ill. Those are the words being used. Not wrong, not misguided, but ill. When you have lawmakers introducing emergency legislation, actual bills with bill numbers, to ban federal funding for an invasion of Greenland without congressional approval, you have to pause and look at the absurdity of the sentence I just spoke. Congress is passing laws to prevent the president from invading an island of ice because they genuinely believe he might do it on a whim. That is not a check and balance. That is a frantic attempt to grab the steering wheel before the car goes off the cliff. Senator Gallego's bill is not a political stunt. It is a containment strategy. The war powers resolutions emerging regarding Venezuela are not policy debates. They are a legislative straitjacket. The legislative branch is effectively saying, we do not trust the executive branch with the sword of the state anymore. And while the high-level constitutional drama plays out, the ground beneath the White House is shifting. We need to talk about the numbers. The Impeach Trump Again coalition, a massive, sprawling network of grassroots organizations, has just dropped a figure that should send a chill down the spine of every Republican strategist looking at a polling map for 2026. 1 million signatures, 1 million verifiable American citizens have put their names on a document demanding the immediate removal of the president. Now, the cynical view, the DC insider view, is to say, so what? Petitions don't impeach presidents. And technically, that is true. A PDF file of signatures does not trigger a trial in the Senate. But politically, this is an earthquake. 1 million signatures represents a mobilized, radicalized, and attentive base that is no longer asking for healthcare reform or tax adjustments. They are asking for a constitutional eviction. This is the energy that primaries incumbents. This is the energy that flips swing districts. This is the energy that turns a midterm election from a routine check-in into a national referendum on the rule of law. Look at Al Green. For years, he was a voice in the wilderness, often standing alone on the House floor calling for impeachment. But look at the vote count on his most recent resolution, 140 members. That is a 77% increase in support. Do you understand what a 77% increase means in the slow-moving world of congressional inertia? It means the dam is cracking. It means that the moderate position, the let's wait and see position, is becoming untenable. It means that 140 members of the House looked at their districts, looked at the polling, looked at the president's behavior, and decided that it is politically safer to vote for impeachment than to vote against it. The center of gravity is moving, and it is moving away from Trump. However, we must be forensic about the other side of this equation. We must look at the Democratic leadership with the same cold objectivity. Because right now, the Democratic Party is fighting a civil war over the soul of its strategy. On one side, you have the base, you have the squad, you have the 140 members backing Al Green. They are looking at the Greenland threats, the Venezuela strikes, the erratic behavior at the retreat, and they are saying, the Constitution demands action now. To wait is to be complicit. Their argument is moral. It is absolute. If a president is unfit, you remove him. You do not look at a calendar. On the other side, you have the leadership, the strategists, the people looking at the 2026 map with calculators in their hands. They are terrified that a failed impeachment attempt, one that dies in a Republican-controlled House or Senate, will be a gift to Donald Trump. They fear it will let him play the martyr. They fear it will energize his base in the deep red districts that determine the balance of power. This is the brutal calculus of Washington. Is it better to let a dangerous man stay in power unchecked for 6 more months to guarantee a victory in November? Or do you strike now, risk failure, and potentially hand him a second wind? This tension is paralyzing the party leadership, resulting in this strange halfway approach we are seeing. War powers resolutions, funding bans, strong rhetoric, but stopping just short of the I word from the very top. They are building the scaffold, but they are afraid to pull the lever. But Donald Trump isn't looking at the nuance of Democratic strategy. He is looking at the binary outcome, win or die. That is why the January 6th retreat, a date dripping with irony, was so pivotal. Trump stripped away the facade. He didn't say, I'm innocent, so it doesn't matter who controls the House. He didn't say, the facts are on my side. He said, if we lose the House, I get impeached. He knows the machine is already built. He knows the articles of impeachment are sitting on hard drives in the Longworth House office building, ready to be filed. He knows the witnesses are prepped. He knows the committee assignments are already being drafted in shadow meetings. He knows that if the gavel changes hands in November 2026, the timeline collapses. What would normally take months of hearings and investigations will happen in days. Why? Because the investigation has been happening in real time for years. The public record is the evidence. The tweets are the exhibits. The speeches are the confessions. If Democrats take the gavel on January 3rd, 2027, Donald Trump becomes the most vulnerable president in American history by January 4th. And that brings us to the most dangerous part of this entire saga. A panicked president is a dangerous president. When a leader feels the walls closing in, when he feels that his legal and political survival is entirely dependent on the loyalty of a shrinking circle of enablers, he does not become more rational. He becomes more volatile. He lashes out. He looks for distractions. He looks for foreign entanglements that can rally the flag. This is why the Venezuela situation and the Greenland rhetoric are not just gaffes. They are potential escape hatches. They are attempts to change the narrative from corruption and incompetence to war and strength. Congress is trying to weld those hatches shut. That is what the funding bans are about. That is what the War Powers Acts are about. It is a race. It is a race between a president looking for a crisis to save him and a Congress trying to legally prevent him from creating one. So, where does this leave us? It leaves us in a moment of extreme fragility. We are not watching a standard political cycle. We are watching a high-speed collision between the personality of one man and the resilience of a 250-year-old legal document. The within hours framing you see in headlines? It's dramatic, yes, but emotionally, it is accurate. The pressure is rising by the hour. Every new poll, every new signature on that petition, every new defection in the House ratchets up the tension inside the West Wing. Trump is betting everything, his legacy, his freedom, his presidency, on one single variable, the Republican majority in the House. He is telling them, "You are my human shield." But here is the question that should keep everyone awake at night. What happens if the shield breaks? What happens if the American voter looks at the chaos, looks at the instability, looks at the sheer exhaustion of the Trump era, and decides to flip the switch in November 2026? Donald Trump has told us what happens. He told us at the retreat, "I will be impeached." He sees the future clearly. The only question is, can he break the system before the future arrives? This isn't a political game anymore. It's a countdown. And the clock is ticking louder than it ever has before. If you are watching this, realize that you are not just a spectator to a news cycle. You are a witness to history in its most volatile form. The patterns are visible if you know where to look. This isn't the last chapter. When the next move happens, and it will happen soon, you'll want to understand exactly what you're seeing beyond the headlines. Subscribe so you're not caught off guard when it matters most.